Warning: this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Serious, what is the creepiest thing you don't talk about in your profession? I run pools. We make sure our swimming instructors have good training in spotting the signs of child abuse because we see so much more of your kid's body than most other folks in their lives. Bathing suits don't do much to cover up suspicious bruising. Yikes, but also thank you. Honestly, the fact that most stuff we deal with causes cancer. Generally, you can be quite safe as a chemist, but it's the long-term exposure that's an issue. Being somewhat not safe over time causes lots of issues. Sure, you always hear of someone who got a liter of solvent to the face, or got a toxic powder on their arm and was fine, but it's the sum of all your exposures, not the day-to-day stuff that kills you. Be smart and be safe. Wear gloves, wear a lab coat, don't breath anything in, and work in a fume hood with everything. Lab safety is paramount. The little things adding up is what'll get you for sure. Anyways, I gotta wash my hands with benzene before I leave the lab. See ya. The fact that human organs are shipped like regular packages at FedEx. I see them almost every day. It's most a company called CryoLife, I think. It's for organ donation. But we are very professional and careful with these packages, in particular for obvious reasons. I did the holiday temp thing at FedEx a few years ago, and one of first deliveries one day was a bunch of human freaking hearts, and I just was not prepared for that. Sometimes when we deliver a stillborn baby that passed a while ago, the head may come off in delivery. Fortunately, it usually doesn't. This reminds me, I had a stillborn at 6 months. Walked around 2 days with a dead baby inside while my cervix was dilated naturally. I found out that the skin sloughs off, so she was born without skin. I could have done without those 3 days in my life. The amount of suicide among doctors. Physicians have among the highest rates of suicide worldwide, but I didn't understand how significant it was until I was in the field. I assumed it wasn't a big issue. The career seemed great with prestige, high job security and income, and it is great, but I didn't know about working 60 days in a row, operating after being awake for 72 hours on call, cutthroat competition and training bottlenecks, the constant expectation and pressure to be the best and know it all from seniors and patients alike, the harassment and bullying from colleges that eat their young. Now that I'm working in hospital networks, I don't go more than a couple of months without hearing about another doctor who attempted or committed suicide. There is more open discussion about the crisis, but most remains unspoken. Many doctors in my country won't disclose or seek help for their mental health problems out of fear they'll be reported and have restrictions on their license. And if you are taken to hospital for the suicide attempt, the field is small enough that your colleagues and friends will hear about it, no matter how much staff maintain confidentiality. I visited a friend in Aiku who attempted suicide, and he was mortified that he had been transported to the hospital he was employed in. Everyone knew and he moved across the country. And you hear about funerals for an untimely passing of a 30-something-year-old doctor, while nobody talks about how or why they died. We are very uncomfortable talking about suicide. The smell of burning human flesh. I'm an industrial welder and occasionally have a molten blob of steel land on exposed skin. We don't mention it outside of work because of obvious reasons. I have a bunch of scars on my right forearm from welding burns that several doctors have accused me of being an IV drug user because of. The number of deaths and injuries. Industrial maintenance isn't a really safe career path. I personally know 4 people that have been seriously injured and 2 that were killed on the job. I spent 30 minutes in an aluminum refinery once. It was pretty terrifying. Guy showing me around told me how if a fairly insignificant amount of water or moisture got into one of the enormous vats of liquid, it would essentially erupt like a volcano. I was ready to leave after that. IT security at a lot of places is a joke. You'd be horrified how at some high profile / hold a lot of your personal data there isn't really an emails per harass on security. Sure, they do just enough, but it's more aimed at protecting their image and whatnot. That's your data. As a teacher, we know, but don't talk about it, how many of our kids have very fricked up leaves. We know which kids have emotionally abusive siblings. We know which kids have no friends. We know which kids' parents pay no attention to their accomplishments. When it's something that crosses the line, sexual abuse, unsafe living conditions, etc., we will report it to CPS. Hell, as far as I am aware, we are required to in every state, certainly are in mine. But there are so many horrible, horrifying things that kids have to go through that don't cross the line into reportable territory. For example, one of my students 2 years ago was the only boy out of 5 children. His mother, her husband having walked out after baby number 5 was born, took all of her aggression out on my student. It was never abusive, to our knowledge, but he confided in me that his mother just didn't care about him. Any accomplishment of his sister's was praised and celebrated. His accomplishments? Ignored. The kid was one of the sweetest boys I have ever taught. All he wanted was to make his mother proud of him. She couldn't have cared less though, because to her he was just a reminder of the man who left her. The kid was emotionally neglected and starved for positive attention. We also know about the kids who have had seriously fricked up shit happen to them: rape, molestation, severe physical abuse, even torture. One girl I taught was raped by her father and her uncle for years. Her uncle moved out of the country and her father is in prison. The situation has been resolved legally, but she is still facing years and years of psychological problems. So, to end my rambling, the creepiest thing about my profession that we don't talk about is how many of our students are messed up and facing years of therapy because of things beyond their control. A small percentage of people getting tattooed have HIV, AIDS, hepatitis, etc., and they are not always honest on their release forms. I was taught to always treat every client as if they have hepatitis C, so everyone gets the same precautions, safety measures, and equipment sterilization. It's tough though, because we'll have sketchy people that probably use drugs, or come in wanting their house party tattoo fixed and we have no idea if they were sharing needles. We either make a judgment and deny them service, or treat them like everyone else and use precaution. I've only had one person be honest and tell me they had HIV while they filled out their paperwork. I wish I never knew this, but I was a hairdresser for a while, and at one point was working in a not so good area. I had just started at this new salon, and the owner warned me to watch out for an older man who would come in after a young girl. That in and of itself was kind of strange, but nothing too jarring. It's also important that we had almost no staff. Do I work many 6-7 hour shifts by myself? Well, one day a young woman, maybe 25 years old, came in, and an older man behind her, who said absolutely nothing. I took her to the chair, and like everyone else, asked her what she wanted. She pulled me close to her and said, "That man there thinks I'm getting my head shaved. He gave me $100, but just trim it." I looked back at the man, and there he was, starting to masturbate in the corner. I told him to leave and called the police. The girl started crying in the chair. It was by far the creepiest thing I've seen. I never knew people had fetishes like that. I wish I never knew. Patients' perception of their doctors is almost entirely based on our people skills/communication, but this does not correlate very well to the quality of our medical decision making. The reality is that there is a huge range within the medical community as far as motivation to learn and improve, being up to date with the latest research, etc. And sometimes friendly doctors are terrible decision makers. Likewise, some have no people skills to speak of, but are some of the smartest and hardest working people on the planet. The best way to assess your doctor's decision making is to go off the recommendations of other doctors, but even that is not 100% reliable because a lot of us are hesitant to publicly criticize our colleagues. I work in TV news and some viewers can be very creepy. People subconsciously feel like they know us because they see us every day in their homes. Some of the mail my co-workers receive is so questionable. Like one guy, a well-known and beloved weatherman, regularly gets postcards from the same dude that hates him and berates him. Another guy acts as if he actually knows one of our weekend anchors, in his letters talking about how they used to go to various concerts together. Nope. Once I opened a package with all these random objects: band-aids, Lay's, a pair of socks, conversation hearts, and 5 valentines, each detailing how the person would storm the building. Once I did a story vaguely related to vaping, and within minutes a guy tracked down my personal Facebook and sent me 3 videos cussing me out and a long rant about how I was a pissant whore and a freaking moron. I work in an eco-friendly importer who imports, well, eco-friendly products that replace disposable or single-use products, especially plastics. The amount of plastic involved in production, shipping, storing, And packing those items is insane. It's just all stripped from the finished product before it lands in the customer's hands. There's also issues with ordering from abroad, everything from factory waste to the fuels to get it here. It's really, really sad, and nobody addresses it. Ever. It's not talked about. We just strip off the plastic and toss it before shipping to the customer. Not really creepy but sad, and so very obviously ignored. I don't know if it's really creepy, but drug and alcohol use on the job in construction is a big issue that's almost never explicitly addressed in the industry. To keep up or relax a little during the day, some guys will use stimulants or drink on their breaks and lunch, and because max production is the goal on most jobs, it tends to be left alone until it causes problems. It's not nearly as widespread as it once was, but it's still a big problem, and the amount of supers and foremen, typically older guys, many of whom have done the same at some point in the past and will definitely know how to recognize it, who are willing to look the other way for the sake of production when one of their guys is taking pulls of Jameson / snorting lines / popping a Adderall in the parking lot on their break / lunch is downright scary. That we've been hacked repeatedly. Any data you trusted us with is out there now, either for sale or just to freely download if you find the right site. The only reason your identity has not been stolen is that the thieves chose to steal someone else's today, and there are orders of magnitude more honest people than there are professional identity thieves. Pure random luck is the only reason your credit rating is not in tatters right now. None of this is publicized, because the laws were deliberately written in such a way that we decide what constitutes a breach, and that decision is never meaningfully accountable to anyone. So, surprise, we have never declared that any of the times that we were hacked constituted a formal breach. Probably too late for anyone to read this, but I work for a social media influencer who everyone praises for keeping it real and being such a nice and lovely person. Reddit. She's a huge bully and a total psycho. What you see in her posts is so fake. It's scary to me that so many people look up to her and even say she has cured their depression or made them feel happy again. I'm glad that those people feel better about themselves, but this girl is not a good person and has contributed to the mental breakdown of more than one person in real life. I wish people wouldn't believe everything they see on social media. It freaks me out how she's able to make herself look like such a saint when she's so nasty. I'm a nurse. I'd say it's probably the fact that people know when they're going to die. They will straight up tell you today is my last day. Thank you for being kind, and you reassure them because their vitals are good. They are taking to treatment well. Nothing happening that would indicate a drastic decline. Then, inevitably, you will hear a flatline on the machine and run in, and sure enough that patient has passed away. If it hadn't happened so many times, I would chalk it up to a few people who just didn't have the will to live anymore. But I've seen it enough. I know that's not it. Really creepy when you think about it too hard. Please subscribe if you liked the video. It really helps the channel to grow. Adios.